A badge of honor. Police officers and first responders wear badges to let their communities know they are here to protect and serve. But that's not how it feels today, and the stress of the job is taking its toll, taking lives through suicide and post-traumatic stress injury. A Badge of Honor podcast features the cast of the same name, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno. Sam, John, and the team offer the first responders workshops through their critical incident stress management teams and mental health liaisons to offer state-certified T-COLE credit programs that save lives. It's time to smash through the stigma. It's time to heal from your injury, and it's time to back our blue. Welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast. Here are your hosts, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno.
Hey, welcome to A Badge of Honor with John and Sam. We are powered by the OBBM network. And man, I want to tell you, welcome back, everybody, because we were on a little 1 week hiatus. It was a nice little break, but I didn't miss it. Sam, how you doing?
Things are good. You know, I think it's appropriate for a big shout out from the storms that we had come through here to 3 major police events, 2 in a matter of a couple of days that, to all of our first responders that are out there. It is now summer in Texas, and that means searing heat. So we are, we're thinking about you when you're out on these calls. Unfortunately, they've been SWAT calls, and then the other one still putting together bits and pieces. But just be safe out there, and we need to really take care of our each other in our communities and look out for each other.
Oh yeah, I got to tell you. To all our first responders, you probably, unless you have kids, you'll probably never do this. But this weekend, I had the pleasure of going to the movies with my grandkids, right? And we went to go see the new Inside Out 2.
Okay.
Did you hear about that movie?
I mean, I know the premise of it, but is there some earth shattering or are we seeing this movie?
The movie's great for kids, and I think it's spectacular for any adult who is battling.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
This was the best $15 therapy session I have ever spent. I'll tell you right now. They did such an amazing job with the emotion aspect of, between anxiety and sadness and happiness and joy. And they brought it all together. And I tell you, man, Tara's like looking at me. She's like, "What's up?" I'm going, "This is hitting." And she's like, "This a cartoon?" I go, "You wouldn't believe it, but it's worth a shot," because I walked out of that movie theater after watching this kids movie going, man, it all just things came together. And I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing how they did all this. So it really isn't always meant for the gearing to the kids. Go see it by yourself. I mean, bring somebody. You don't want to go as an adult you'll be a little creepy. But
or you sit in the back. Not.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. So
now that you're giving the PSA.
But I got to tell you, it was probably one of the best kids movies I've ever seen, because it really hit an adult. And if you're battling, or if you're struggling, or if you're just stressing out, man, this brings your emotions to a new level. It puts things into perspective, and the way they did it, they really knocked it out of the park. I'm not big with always giving Disney movies the thumbs up, but this one really, they had to have some good people writing this. And
is it a Disney movie? I thought it was a different company.
It's Pixar. It's a Disney movie.
Okay.
It's a Disney movie. But I tell you, they had to have some mental health experts on the writing of this, because they touch on things between like anxiety, how anxiety takes over joy, and then kind of runs it feels like it runs your life, and then also joy comes in and gets battered away by anxiety, and then joy fights her way back in. It's a really, really deep movie on a mental health level, but it is healing, and it definitely helped me. It was a good movie to watch. So if you are battling and you just want a Saturday afternoon to sit and watch some cartoons of different emotions going through, that is definitely a movie to see.
Well, that's great. And this was the second one. So the first one probably lays a good
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 foundation.
premise.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it is PTSD Awareness Month, so maybe it's no coincidence that they released it when they did. And part of battling is to be given glimpses by either what you just said, a movie, or a conference, or reaching out to somebody who has been through something that can offer hope. And our guest today, Jason Mills, I'll call it, he is the resilient responder. And we are in for a treat because as John, you, me, Jeff, and John, we use our stories to help heal first responders, to help their families understand what a life is like as a first responder. And Jason is doing this in a humorous, enthusiastic, and fun way where he's getting out there. So let's welcome Jason Mills, the Resilient Responder, the Badge of Honor podcast. Welcome.
Hey, thank you both for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to be here, and I appreciate the invite onto the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. Please tell everybody watching and listening on their favorite podcast app just about your background, how you decided to become a first responder in the first place, and all the way up. We'll take it through creating the resilient responder.
Sure. So first, John, your intro from the Disney Pixar movie was spot on. It's like we had scripted that.
Did you see it?
I haven't seen it. I saw the intro for it. Saw the trailer for it when I was watching I went to see the Blue Angels documentary at an IMAX down in Florida, and the Disney movie was one of the trailers for the show. So it's one of the things that the way you led into that about how the anxiety pushes out the joy, the happiness, which is right into one of the teaching moments that I do working with first responders. And you talked about, the anxiety. When you look at when as a first responder, we're all programmed to survive, right? And when we start working from that perspective of my job is dangerous, and then life is dangerous, and society potentially is dangerous, we get super good at looking for things that are threats. And that breeds anxiety. And then anxiety maybe breeds depression because we're always focused on things that are maybe not so happy. And I talk about having to be very intentional that all of those good things are still out there. The joy, the happiness, the adventure, the excitement, the love. We just overlook them. We look right past them because we're too preoccupied on the things that are a risk to us. So that was a great lead in for that. I appreciate that, even if it was maybe unscripted. So
yeah, it was. But go see the movie because you just said it too. It pushes, like, the anxiety pushes joy to the back of the brain, and it's got to fight its way back up to take over from the anxiety, and how it puts things in different places in the brain. It was a wonderful movie, man. Go check it out. Though.
We have to be intentional with bringing that positivity back as first responders. So right off the bat, everybody watching and listening, you can tell that Jason knows what he's talking about, and he's been through some stuff. And so I think what we're going to do is rather than Jason interrupt our story, because I'm just looking, let's get our first commercial in. We'll be right back, folks, and we're going to hear Jason's background. Stay tuned.
Perfect.
Move freely, America, without medical restrictions or penalty. Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Move freely, America, with one voice, without fear of retribution, achieving a common goal, medical freedom. We the people make our voices heard by connecting with state legislators and engaging a constitutionally compliant medical Bill of Rights for all citizens. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
To protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice, too. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America. My voice.
And my voice.
And together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam and our guest Jason Mills with the resilient responder. And the big word right in there is resilient. You know, if we lose our, you know, we have to build up our resiliency to almost anything in what we do on a daily basis. And Jason has found the way to really bring a lot of different perspective into it, not only through his workshops and his knowledge, but kind of not like a sit down therapy session, but a feel good session. So welcome back, Jason. How you doing?
Great. I'm great. It's good to be back on.
Now I hear you're coming to Dallas. Is that me and Sam got excited about it.
I am. I got invited to Dallas in the hottest month of the year, which is super exciting. But actually, I have a great opportunity. I'm coming down there, and I'm speaking at the International Association of Fire Chiefs International Conference down there, and I'm presenting a topic that is it's called fleet maintenance, a fleet maintenance approach to health and wellness in the fire service. And it kind of makes some comparative analogies between how we take care of our apparatus and how we take care of our equipment, our personnel. And so there's some fun stuff that's in there. I try to put everything that I do, I try to add a little bit of humor into everything, because if we don't laugh, at least occasionally, then we'll probably cry quite a bit. So there's some good information in there, some studies, some evaluation of some studies that have been done, return on investment stuff, why this is a good financially sound decision for departments to be implementing these policies, but also that, you know, we need to be looking at the entire person when we build a program. There's a lot of one size fits all programs out there for wellness that really ignore pretty big pieces of the person, and they're not flexible enough or adaptable enough to be able to be useful for everybody. So that's middle of August. So yeah, looking forward to coming down. Never been to Dallas before, and so we're gonna spend a few days down there.
Yeah, don't hold it against us. You know, I'm a little bit I felt a little bit left out looking at your what you've got going on in your office, because you and John have the fire helmets. We got the thin red line right here going on right here. I see your flag in the back. So yeah, just tell everybody a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in right here in this town. Haven't really traveled too far. My dad was the local fire chief. He was fire chief for about 30 years when I was growing up. I started into fire and EMS very, very early, as a junior at probably 13 years old, kicking around the fire station. Went to college, thought that I was going to be a football star. Turned out I wasn't very fast. So that didn't pan out quite the way I thought it was going to. And ended up kind of pivoting, went to KVCC, which is one of the local tech colleges, to be a paramedic. My brother-in-law at the time was a firefighter paramedic for the city of Augusta. And I already had a family at that point. I'm the youngest of four. And so by that point, I already had a family that was very immersed in public safety. Both of my older brothers are state troopers. They're sergeants in the Maine State Police. Still working. I'm encouraging them to be retired state troopers. I think that they'll find that role is more enjoyable. One of them has 35 years in, and the other one has almost 30 years in.
Wow.
So guys that have spent time on the tactical team, the bomb team, K9 handler. So they've certainly put a lot of effort and sacrifice into this state and into their community. So that was already something that I was surrounded by the time I was, into college. Everybody else in my family was already doing something in public safety. My sister's a cardiac care nurse at the VA. My best friend growing up is a Portland firefighter. We went to school together. So everybody around me had some type of, public service background. And I just kind of flowed right into that. Worked for the fire department in Augusta for 25 years. Concurrently, while I was doing that, I worked for LifeFlight in Maine as a flight medic. Had a great time there for several years. And like a lot of other firefighters, I owned a side business. I had a construction company, and kind of towards the end of my career, this idea of mental health came up, and I never had any intention of being anywhere near or related to mental health. I didn't like the idea. When the idea kind of popped into my head, I tried to push it back out. And we're not going to do this. That's not something that I'm, I own a construction company. I'm a firefighter. And so the idea kept kicking around. And one of the things that helped really cement this in was the lack of resources that we were finding when we did reach out for help. We were getting to the point, and you guys are probably both familiar, firefighters, police officers, other first responders, they don't reach out for help when there's small problems. We're not going in because there's a couple little things that we'd like to tweak in our lives to make things a little bit better so we can have this more holistic, wellness plan going. We're going in because, alcohol, drugs, marriage is falling apart, on the verge of getting fired, suicidal ideology, all these things. But when people were getting to that point and then reaching out, I had a friend come back to me and say that the counselor that he went to see started crying partway through the session. And he said, I felt horrible. I also felt really bad that I never got to the bad part of it. And so he left and he didn't go back. And so I decided reluctantly that I would get into this field to see if I could be useful in some way for this very small percentage of the population that is first responders. And that's really all I focus on is first responders and their families and the unique experience that they have and how my experience might be helpful to them. So I work now as a clinician through the Wellness Center of Maine. And then, so that's where I do all my clinical work through. And then on the side, or the other side of it is my resilient responder business, which does consulting and speaking and training for fire departments and pretty much anybody that will listen to me.
Jason, let me ask you a question. Since you have so much, not only your educational background, but your hands-on experience through your family. I mean, you have close to, let's see, 60 years just in law enforcement and another 35, and plus yourself in firefighting and critical care nurse. So that's a huge hands-on experience just within your family. As a professional, me and Sam always discuss this between firefighters and cops. Firefighters, their programs, they get to sit around the kitchen table a little bit. They get to knock off some of that stress every once in a while. Not deeply, but they get let loose a little bit. The cops, on the other hand, don't. Because they're running from call to call and they usually never get together. Do you see that as a family dynamic? I mean, Thanksgiving dinner, you got 60 years of law enforcement, you got another 60 years of firefighting. How does that work out? Do you see a difference in the way we are? You said it's not a one size fits all. Do you see a difference between the police and the fire on the mental health issue?
I would say yes, to some extent. And I would say that is largely based in what still remains for stigma out there. One of the things that is highly concerning for police officers is that, part of their job requires them to carry a firearm all the time. And I think that there's a misperception out there that if you start engaging into the mental health system, that's going to be put at risk, that your ability to carry a firearm, that your ability to continue to work is going to be jeopardized. And I think that firefighters, to some extent, don't have that type of thought process, that if they engage in the mental health services, that they're going to end up in a difficult spot and not be able to potentially provide for their family because they can't go to work. There is a difference also in the built-in, I would say, peer support systems for the fire service. And that can kind of be parsed out, even if you look at the difference between full-time fire departments and volunteer departments, that full-time fire departments have a much better outcome after traumatic incidents than the volunteer departments do, because of that built-in peer support, that built-in debriefing that's available at the station. So even if you don't have a formalized peer support team, or you don't do a formalized critical incident debriefing, you're probably still sitting around the table, sitting on the bumper of the truck, having those conversations. And this gets played out too into the military, where you see a difference in drone pilots versus manually operated aircraft. That manually operated aircraft pilots tend to have better outcomes than drone pilots, and that's because of the built-in support system that is available on the base. And those guys are sharing an experience together, versus if you're a drone pilot, you may be in a base in Arizona, leaving, then going back to go to your kid's t-ball game that night. So
you bring up
they don't get the opportunity to decompress.
Yeah, you bring up two things. Sorry, didn't mean to step on top of you. The peer support and critical incident stress management, two things that you list on your website that you do with departments. When we come back from our next break, I want to talk about how you do that with the departments and how they can partake of your services. We'll be right back, everybody, with a resilient responder, Jason Mills.
Interested in starting a podcast or TV show? Worried about what you'll say and how to keep it engaging? Think you'd like to be a guest on podcast, radio, or TV shows? Hi, I'm Susan Hamilton, owner and founder of OBBM Network, and I would like to invite you to an OBBM media training to get the tools you need for a relaxed and polished performance you'll be proud to share. Our specialized training techniques include role play, voice training, and everything you need to deliver a confident, clear, and engaging interaction. Go to offbeatbusiness.com. Go to the calendar and register for a training that's convenient for you. Dates available now, 214-714-0495.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. With our special guest, Jason Mills, the resilient responder. Before we took our last break, we were discussing the differences in the critical incidents and the peer support programs between not only the police department and the fire department, but you brought up a good topic, the volunteer departments. When we say trauma has no value, the volunteer departments are always put on the back burner sometimes because they don't have the funding, they don't have the manpower to do all this stuff. But they actually see the same exact stuff paid departments do and the bigger departments do. So it doesn't matter if you're in a volley or small department, big department, busy, slow, it doesn't matter. These small little conversations that you have on the front of the truck are meaningful because they're releasing that pressure. They're releasing that stuff. And when we talk, like Sam, you said you wanted to bring up the critical incident versus the peer supports. This is a good point in it. That even just letting out that little bit of and venting that little bit of anxiety or stress really empties your bucket a little bit each time, and you don't get that overflowing feeling.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing a lot of work, and the people that I work for, the Wellness Center of Maine, Healing Partners, which is our the psychiatry side of that group. Is doing a phenomenal job with peer support, building peer support programs in our areas. And what we're trying to do is we're really trying to hand over the critical incident debriefings and the peer support back to the peers, because those are the people that are going to be related to the best if you have a critical incident. So we're getting involved in departments. We're trying to be proactive about training. We're also trying to be proactive about reaching out and doing education with families. One of the things we know is that, when you go home, things are either going to get better or get worse. They're probably not going to be, stay the same. So your family and your support system there is going to tip things one direction or the other. We know that for anybody exposed to a critical incident or a traumatic incident. So say if any of the three of us today were to experience a traumatic incident, the best predictor of how we do and what our outcome is our sense of social support. And that's your family. Your family is your closest set of social support. And so if there's a distance there, or your family doesn't understand the experiences that you're having, that can raise some real issues. We try to do some education. Anytime there's a critical incident, we send some paperwork home and some information home for the family, because they don't need necessarily the details. We don't need to traumatize them as well, but we do need them to know that that their loved one has just been through something that's pretty tough, and that may take a few days, few weeks to recover from, and also the things that they can look for and ways that they can help them. We talk about going back to the volunteer versus career side of things. If you're in a career department, you get a little bit of time to decompress from whatever incident you had before you end up going back home to your family. And so you get to process a little bit. If you don't have that, you're going right back and you're still carrying all of that chemical load from that exposure. And I make a simple analogy, and I don't know if it's 1,000% accurate or not, but if you were to take and drink several shots of alcohol, right? predictably you would act different because you've been affected by a chemical.
Mhm.
Well, when you're exposed to massive amounts of trauma, you're being affected by the cortisol levels in your body. And a lot of the effects of that are the similar. Acutely high levels of stress and high levels of cortisol can decrease functional intelligence by 14%. And if you think about trying to have a tough conversation with a family member, I don't have 14% to be able to sacrifice and still have a good outcome. And so when we're going home after these events and we're still trying to navigate life with our spouses and our children, but our tolerance for stress is already weakened. Our intellect is being damaged because we're more emotionally reactive, and we know that once we switch into an emotionally reactive state, we're not intellectually as available. So we try to provide this education for the first responders and for their families, and not for anybody to have an excuse for bad behavior, but more as an awareness, and so that we can give people a little bit of grace after some of these, and that we're looking to try to help the situation, and we're not adding on top of it with whatever may be going on at home.
Sure. Yeah, the understanding with the overflow of emotion and trauma into the families is something that I still think is a big piece that's left out. Because, of course, number one, when somebody's in crisis, we're triaging the person, right? To help them understand, the first responders understand what's going on inside their bodies, why things are happening the way they're happening. And like you said at the beginning of the show, we're not the best, we don't say anything when it's the little things. And I think where things have shifted, and certainly what you do, Jason, is bringing to light, hey, let's get out in front of this. Let's have your wellness plan so that the little things never become the big things. And the family aspect has to be kind of in that circle.
Yeah, absolutely. That all has to be included. Your social group has to be part of that. It's a huge area of a wellness or a resiliency plan. A couple of the things that I try to do when I have the opportunity is to provide the education that most of the things that are happening from a mental health perspective are either because of a physical or chemical change. That's it. Like it's not, I don't want to say it's rocket science, but it really can be kind of boiled down to those couple of things. And it's easy to explain this through science about how the trauma exposure changes our brains, how it changes our perspective, with the chemical change that it has on us, and how when we change the chemical makeup of our bodies, how it changes the mood and the behaviors and a bunch of other physiological things. But then the other part is most first responders don't get into being a police officer, being a firefighter, and say, I can't wait till I can go in and talk to a counselor. I can't wait for my first counseling appointment. Nobody's come through the door yet. I do try to encourage people, if you're getting into this line of work, you should probably screen somebody at least. It's kind of like having an attorney on retainer. You don't want to be trying to find a counselor when things actually have gone really badly. If you could build a little bit of a rapport with somebody before that would be helpful. That's a lot of what we try to do with our peer support stuff. We're doing ride-alongs with police departments and fire departments so that the crews in there recognize our faces. So if something happens, we're not a stranger that's coming in to talk to them. But the proactive piece is huge. I make the analogy that if you're going to get into a boxing ring, the time to prepare for that isn't when you're stepping in between the ropes, right? You're going to have a bad experience because there's an impact coming that you're not ready for. And we know in this line of work, there's going to be an impact at some point. If you're getting into this, getting into being a first responder and you don't think that you're ever going to go through an incident that's going to be difficult, that's delusional. You should say that's a different diagnosis for a different time. But if you're getting into this line of work, you should be aware of what you're signing up for. And we know that there are things that you can do ahead of time to make you go kind of weather the storm a little bit better. If I go into a traumatic event and I'm physically healthy and, socially stable and emotionally stable and my relationships are good and my finances are good, if I have that impact, I'll have more resources available to allocate towards it. And, we don't get to say that we're going to just put something off into one bucket and something's going to go into a different bucket. That's not how it works. Stress is cumulative. And so if we have a lot of stress in our lives at a baseline, then we don't have much reserve there. One of the analogies that I use to illustrate this point is that if you were to have two people in a car accident with identical injuries, and one of them succumbed to their injuries and the other one survived it, at first glance, that makes it a little bit difficult to say, well, why would that happen? But then if you take and you make the point of, well, the person that was driving was a 25-year-old Olympic athlete, and the person in the passenger seat was his 80-year-old grandfather, right? Now you can say, well, one person absorbed that impact with a lot more resources available to be able to get through it. And that's every day that we come to work. Every day we come to work, we have some available resources, and it changes all the time. If I get a good night's sleep and I go into work and I've, taken care of myself and I've, had good food and, my relationships at home are good, then I can probably tolerate the workload better than if I go in and, I stayed up late drinking and my marriage is on the rocks and I'm arguing with my children and I don't know if the vehicle that I drove to work is still going to be there when I leave because maybe it's getting repossessed while I'm at the station. So if we can go into these events in a good spot, then we're likely to have a good outcome on the other side of it. So in the programming that I try to teach is we look at making attainable and sustainable goals in different areas of life, and nothing big, right? No New Year's resolution stuff. Not looking at, if I'm not a runner and I say, I'm going to start running 5 miles a day, that's not a realistic goal for me physically. What I want to look at is there something that I could do that I would be able to build in as a habit that would make me better, that, and we do it in an 8-week sections. So there's 8 different areas, and you pick a different area and you work on that area and you keep adding to it. And when that comes back around again, you can add change or you can maintain that activity or that habit. And so it's basically slowly changing our habits into creating a healthier overall person.
Jason, I want to talk about, because you do mention specifically 8 things on your website, and I think you just hit number 1, but I want to talk about those others so that people get a really good understanding of what it's like to work with you. We're going to take our next break, and we will come right back with Jason Mills, the resilient responder. Stay tuned, everybody.
Look, when you need to respond to an aggressive situation to protect yourself, your family, or your property, understanding your firearm and legal position are critical. Officers know your skills are only as good as your commitment to training. So know what you're doing. So when you're in a vulnerable situation, we can count on your response. Whether you're a beginner or a licensed gun carrier, Carry in Texas offers basic firearms training, Texas permitless carry courses, license to carry, and basic 2A courses so you can understand the responsibilities, situational awareness, and learn the technical skill required when you carry your firearm. Go to carryintexas.com to find the right course for you. Join me, former United States Secret Service agent Samantha Horwitz, on the range for beginner basics, LTC prep, and range practice. Go to carryintexas.com today. That's carryintexas.com.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam and Jason Mills of the Resilient Responder. Jason, before we left on our last break, we were talking about the 8-step program. Sammy, we were just touching on that a little bit. We got through the first step. But, Jason, you hit on so many good things on a first responder level that I understood. I'm not a big word guy like you. Want to keep it, right to the point and simple, and things that first responders can really actually relate to. And I am going to steal something you said. I hope you don't mind, for our workshop, because, and I even wrote it down this way I don't forget, is the alcohol versus cortisol. And that just hit me in a way that I was like, we talk to cops and we go to the workshop and we say, oh, you're getting all this chemical dump and the dopamine and the cortisol. And they look at you like, I'm not a fucking chemist. I don't know. I don't know what that stuff is. But when you relate, every cop and every firefighter and every first responder knows alcohol. So if you can relate the alcohol to the same results as your chemical dump, man, they may put it together. So if you don't mind, I'm going to use that in our next workshop because I love it. I love the relationship with it. And it brings it sits a little better.
Yeah, John, absolutely. Feel free, and do this before you do that workshop. Google the the effects of alcohol, right? The physiological.
Oh, I know the effects of alcohol. I don't have to Google those.
Yeah,
The effects of cortisol, then
that's a chemical that we figured out. Yeah. And then do the same thing. Google the effects of cortisol and do a side-by-side comparison and see how many of them you would have to cross off the list to make the list identical. There's not many. There's a lot of things in there that you could draw a correlation. And even if it's just for the sake of illustrating the point of the chemical effects. And here's another point to it. Through both of your careers, maybe you've experienced this, you go to a call that is, initially it sounds like it's something significant, right? For firefighters, I would usually use the example of like smoke in a building. And working fire, right? And you get there, you get there, but it's not a working fire. It's a flooded oil burner, or it's a,
toaster oven.
It was a grill in the backyard, and somebody drove by with a cell phone and saw it. And so it comes in as a working structure fire. You get there, and it's nothing, right? And when you go back to the station or you go home at the end of the shift, and somebody asks you, well, how was your shift, or how was the call? You say, it was boring, regular shift, because nothing came of the event. However, for the entirety of your response to that event, your body was getting ready for a fight. And so you're dumping these chemicals into the circulatory system, and your body's doing everything that it's programmed to from a survival standpoint. However, you never get to have the fight. You never get to have that fight to burn it off. And so it just sits. And there it is, waiting to be processed. But the entire, the fight that you would have had if you had to put on your air pack, and it's going to chew through some of that stuff. The same thing, as a physical fight would. It's going to chew through some of those chemicals. That's what they're there for. But when you get stopped and there's no physical activity tied to it, they just sit.
Right.
And so now you just have to wait. And it's similar to, once the alcohol's in the system, there's not a lot you can do to make it get out faster. And so now you're being poisoned by it, or you're being affected by it for whatever period of time.
Great point. Yeah. Great point.
And these are the kind of things, part of the what you talk about when you speak, from your website. For everybody that's listening on your favorite podcast app, you can connect with Jason at theresilientresponder.com. And so take us through some of the other things that if a first responder wanted to reach out to you and sign up, you said it's 8 weeks, what that would look like.
Sure. So the 8 different areas are physical, spiritual, emotional, environmental, social, intellectual, financial, and occupational. And so it basically just takes a look at all of those areas. And so this can be done as part of a classroom. I've taught this class to departments up here, and we go through it. We do it as a group project going through. And you basically pick, well, which thing would be first? So maybe the thing that I think would make the biggest difference in my life that I would want to make as week 1 would be the physical part of it. Maybe I feel like I'm ready to make a physical change. And so if you're working in a department that has, say it's a 2-story fire station, right? Maybe you just make a commitment that you're not going to take the elevator anymore. And that becomes a simple, tangible thing that you can do. And that can be done every shift or every day. And it's not something that you're setting yourself up for failure for. It is just taking a small proactive step. And then as we go through these different areas, we identify ways that people could make some type of improvement in their life that would be small. From a financial side, I do a slide on the cost of Starbucks. And I talk, the Starbucks millionaire. And it's not from investing in Starbucks, it's from not spending $7 every single morning on a coffee. And like, I love Starbucks too, and I don't tell anybody how they should spend their money, because I love like the oat latte things that taste good. But it's more about the awareness of, if I was being more aware and more conscientious about what I was doing, what would my career look like? And then at the end of 25 or 30 years, if I had this money saved up, would that allow me other things? And all of these areas are individual areas, but it would be almost impossible to isolate one area from another, real quick for that one, the financial side of it. You'd make smart investments at the beginning of your career. And one of the best things that ever happened to me was my high school wrestling coach was a financial advisor. So when I got a job at 21 years old, he asked me what I was going to do with my money. And, I said, probably waste it. And he said, well, what if you didn't waste all of it? And didn't. So it was, that was a piece of luck that I've had, that otherwise I would have never looked into that on my own at 21 years old. Just wouldn't. It was nowhere on the radar. But if you take that piece of that financial piece, and then 30 years later, you're thinking about maybe leaving, you now have a lot more occupational options available to you, because you're not requiring yourself maybe to have to make $100,000 a year. Maybe you've made some smart investments and you've set yourself up well so that you can do something that really looks like an enjoyable, rewarding career that you want to pursue. All the other things, if you were to put in, say you want to be more socially active, and so you're going to join maybe a hiking group, right? It's pretty difficult to say that that's not going to have a real impact on your physical health. It's going to have an impact on your emotional health. I mean, we know that regular exercise is oftentimes more effective at reducing depression symptoms than medications, and has a hell of a lot better side effects to it. So these areas are all interconnected, but the important part is that it's all self-driven. It's what's important to the person. We get a lot of times into these prefabbed programs for firefighters and first responders that tell us this is what you have to do, and then this is what you have to do. But largely, they only hit a couple of these areas. They usually talk about fitness, and then they talk about mental health. And you can look fantastic and still be a mess inside. It's about finding some balance, right? If you're super focused in one area, there's probably some other area that has been sacrificed for it. So what we're trying to do is find balance and find something that supports the whole person, and so that they can have this long career and retire in a good spot.
Yeah, that is super important. I have a key question for you. We're going to take our last break. When we come back, John, I'm going to ask that key question straight off. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect.
We'll be right back, everybody.
To the Health Engineer Show. I'm Cliff Buckley, the Health Engineer, right here on the Offbeat 50.
Hi, I'm Larry Cortamp.
Hi, my name is Susan Hamilton, and you're watching Offbeat.
Hi, this is Doreen Milano. Welcome to Big Ideas Small Business, where we will talk to Terry Arjala.
Hey, welcome back to a Band You're On a podcast with John and Sam. Sam, you're already making me laugh. And our guest, Jason Mills. Go ahead, Sam, you got it.
Because I don't want to forget. Like you were saying, you were going to write this down, and it's been on my mind this whole thing. I was like, shoot, I forgot to ask it again before we took the break. But as Jason, you're working with people, you're a clinician, okay? Mm-hmm. You realize that, your path change, you needed to get into this to fill a huge void in assisting the first responders. And so in your practice, everybody, it seems, because you've got sheriff's deputies or state troopers, you've got other firefighters, EMS, and other healthcare practitioners in your family. You're in the main area. So there's got to be a lot of crossover. Are people just go see Jason because they get you and you've been in the community forever? So it's like you've got this built-in trust factor already.
I would say yes and no. So to some extent, there are people that I know so well that I spent my career working with, that relationship may be a little too close to be using as, somebody that's going to be in a counselor role. But that's really based on, their comfort level. But we don't want to be providing counseling to family members, close friends, right, things like that. It becomes difficult. I think that there's a ton of value in just the job that I've had and my experience with it, because, and I still say that, one of the things that I still draw off from the most in my counseling, on the counseling side, is my experience firsthand. And, one of the things that people have said is that, well, when I come to talk to you, I don't have to spend 2 or 3, 4 weeks trying to explain trying to explain to you what it is that I do for work. And some of that's even a language thing. You know, there's certain slang that gets used that from the outside you might have a little bit of a hard time picking up on. And so that's a real benefit there, is that people don't feel like they have to make me understand what they do for work. Which is part of the reason you guys may or may not be familiar that on October 25th of last year, there was a mass shooting in Lewiston, Maine, which is not far from here. And we've started working closely with the Lewiston Police Department. And one of the things that we're doing, you know, people ask me what I'm doing when I go down there to do ride time. And most of it is I'm learning what their life experience is. What's it like to be a police officer in that town? You know, what are the things that are stressful for them? Because it goes just beyond the mass shooting event that they're exposed to. There's a lot of other components that weigh in on how they're, you know, what their experience is as a police officer. And, you know, I have brothers that are police officers, I have friends that are police officers, but I've never been a police officer. And so until I, you know, kind of stand there next to them, I don't know exactly what it's like. And I still don't know what it's like because I'm not doing their job. I'm just trying to get a firsthand view of it. But we talk about cultural competency in counseling. When I was going through my counseling classes, everything was cultural competency. And, you know, we kind of have a certain idea of what that typically would mean. You know, that's usually based on, you know, gender, race, you know, sexual identity, things like that. But there's a huge piece of cultural competency for counselors that comes in understanding the role of a first responder. And so the people that are, you don't have to have been a first responder to be a great clinician. My supervisor, my boss is a phenomenal counselor, better than I am, much better than I am. And she's never been a first responder, but she is very invested in the first responder world and understanding and knowing what their experiences are. And I think that's the benefit of, you know, getting some ride time in and having your, you know, sitting in a patrol car for a while or riding in an ambulance. So my experience as a first responder is definitely beneficial to what I'm doing.
That's phenomenal. And you know, if people are looking to connect with you, I've got your website up. It's theresilientresponder.com. Whether it's for clinical services or where you're speaking or to take advantage of that eight-week course, what's the best way to connect with you, you know, via the, you know, social media and all that stuff?
So the website is up there. Facebook is just The Resilient Responder, and Instagram is the.resilient.responder. And then LinkedIn is just Jason Mills or The Resilient Responder. And I'll say this, and I'm not very famous, not very many people know who I am, so I give out my phone number. So my phone number is 207-458-0882. And when that gets flooded and I can no longer take calls, I'll stop giving it out. But I put it out there because sometimes that's just the easiest way for people to connect and get in touch with me. So yeah, that's
Jason, one question, because since you were doing the ride-alongs, you know, we talked about the critical incidents, and we talked about, you know, different levels of trauma. Now, me and Sam have been out of the field for a while. I don't know if you want to call it political or social trauma. Have you been seeing a lot more trauma within the police department because of the culture that they're, you know, the hatred towards the police, they feel like they're not making a difference type of thing? Do you see a lot of that? Maybe it's anxiety trauma. I don't know if there's a term for it, but I feel that a lot of police officers are feeling that social pressure, and that's weighing heavy on them.
Well, I think one of the things that we've done is that we've put so much pressure on police officers that we don't allow them to be human anymore. You know, we expect people to go out and make split decisions, and then the people that have never been put into those type of roles are allowed to sit back and cherry pick and Monday morning quarterback what they would have done in hindsight, you know, from the comfort of your living room with all the security behind locked doors. You know, it's easy to look and say, well, I wouldn't have done that, or why did that person react like that? I can tell you from my exposure to law enforcement, every one of them is just absolutely professional, remarkable, like well-trained, really, really good people who, when you have conversations with them, they actually really do just want to be out there helping the community. I see how these people interact with the homeless. I see how they interact with, people that are struggling, people that are in the middle of even a domestic, and how they're treating people the way that they, I think, would want to be treated. And it's tough because they're always being scrutinized. They're always being scrutinized and held to a level by other people that those people wouldn't be able to hold themselves to.
And that weighs heavy. That
Yeah.
weighs really heavy.
Yeah, it is. I hope that first responders, because I think depending on where you're a firefighter, it also has an effect that folks reach out to you. So it's our we're putting it out there in the universe. It's our intention to have your phone be blowing up and they don't give it out anymore. Jason, we thank you so much for coming on. Yes. And sharing your story and what you do at the Resilient Responder. And just best of luck to you. And we will be pushing people to check out your services, because this is how you build resiliency for sure.
All right. I appreciate you both. Thank you for having me on.
Look us up when you come to Dallas. Make sure you hit
us up. I will.
Yeah, right. Definitely let us know.
All right. I'll let you know when I'll be down there. All right. Thank you both.
Take care.
I love what he's doing. And please connect. Awesome that he gave his phone number. We don't get that all the time from our guests. So let's blow Jason's phone up. And it's amazing how fast every year we say this, that time is flying. We want to thank everybody who tunes in every single week to our podcast. And if this is your first time and you liked it, hit that like and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. It's that bell so you never miss an episode of our podcast. And we've got a lot of stuff kicking off starting in August. I'll be repping a badge of honor at the Dallas County First Responders Conference, which is put on by the Irving Public Safety and Wellness Unit. That is Wednesday, August 7th. That you can register. Visit the Irving Public Safety and Wellness Unit. Just Google that, and you can find out the registration information. So I'll be there speaking, and then September 6th. We'll be working with the Rowlett first responders, the police department and the fire department. And so be on the lookout for that registration. September 20th, we are doing a joint workshop. We talked about with Jason the importance of that hiking group. Not only are you getting out in nature, but you're getting fit. So we are combining forces with two incredible partners. Our Watch does equine therapy and Heroes on the Water. So we'll be out in nature. That will be September 20th. So we'll be over this heat and we'll be out on the water and working with horses, in addition to working with John Edmondson, who will be doing our Hope Circle that we do. It is absolutely amazing. So there will be a registration link for that. And because we're working with horses and we'll be in kayaks, it'll be a limited number of first responders. So we'll be talking more about that and offering up the spots for that soon. To all of our first responders out there, thank you for what you do. We are praying for you daily. Thank you for keeping our communities right here very safe. For all of our veterans, thank you for just hanging in there for whatever battle you fought in to allow us the freedom to do a show like this every single week. Freedom is not free. Y'all paved the way for it. So we say thank you to all of our active duty personnel spread out across the globe, keeping our shores safe. Thank you. We are praying for you and your families every single day as well. John, take us home.
Man, I'm just going to reiterate what Jason said. Those little bumper talks, those little side conversations, just letting that little one conversation could just vent you out a little bit. Make sure you have those, have them often, Have them every time you feel it. Feel free to talk. And until next week, stay safe.
We'll see you next week, everybody. Take care.
A Badge of Honor podcast is produced for the OBBM Network podcast and protected under copyright law. For content permissions, please submit your request to abadgeofhonor.com on the content page. For OBBM Network programming information, please call 214-714-0495 today.